Maricela Voss stood in front of the mirror and told herself to breathe. She had been practicing that for 3 years. Breathe, smile, be patient, be steady, be whatever the pack needed her to be. And today, of all days, she needed that steadiness more than ever. Today was her Luna Ascension Day. She smoothed the front of her ivory gown with both hands. The gold thread along the collar caught the morning light and shimmered faintly. It was a beautiful dress. She had not chosen it herself. The Pack Council had selected it, pressed it, and hung it on the back of her bedroom door the night before without a word. But she wore it anyway, because that was what she did. She showed up. She adapted. She gave. Her best friend Tamsin sat on the edge of the bed behind her, carefully pinning the last section of Mari's hair into place. "You look stunning," Tamsin said softly. "Thank you." Mari met her eyes in the mirror and smiled. Tamsin did not smile back. She had been quiet all morning, moving carefully, speaking only when spoken to. That was not like her. Tamsin was loud and warm and quick to laugh. But today her hands were careful and her words were few, and something about that made the air in the room feel heavier than it should have. "Is something wrong?" Mari asked. "No." Tamsin pressed her lips together. "Everything is going to be fine." She said it the way people say things when they are trying to make them true by speaking them aloud. Mari turned away from the mirror. She picked up the small ceremonial circlet that sat on the vanity table. It was not yet finished. The final blessing would be spoken over it during the ceremony, after Caden placed it on her head in front of the entire pack. That was the tradition. That was the moment that mattered. She carried it carefully in both hands as she walked toward the hall. The formal hall of the Ashford estate was grand, in the way that old things are grand. High ceilings, stone floors, long wooden beams overhead. The kind of room that made sound travel in strange ways, so that even a whisper could reach the wrong ears. The pack members were gathered along the edges of the room, dressed in their finest. Some of them looked at Mari when she entered. Some of them looked at the floor. That was when she noticed. Caden was already standing at the front of the room. He was tall and composed, wearing the deep charcoal ceremonial coat that marked him as Alpha King. He stood very still, the way he always did when he had made a decision, and was waiting for the world to catch up to him. Seraphine Cole stood beside him. Seraphine was not a pack elder. She was not part of the ceremonial council. She had no reason to be standing at the front of that room on this morning, in a dress the color of dark roses, with her chin lifted and her expression perfectly composed. Mari stopped walking. The room was silent. Caden did not look at her immediately. He looked at a point somewhere above her head, the way powerful people sometimes look when they want to seem calm, while delivering something that is not calm at all. Then he spoke. "This ceremony will not proceed," he said. His voice was even, practiced. "The bond has been severed. Maricela Voss is no longer recognized as this pack's Luna." Someone in the crowd made a small, sharp sound, like a breath knocked loose. Mari heard the words. She understood them. But for a moment, her brain and her body were not connected to each other. She stood in the middle of that stone-floored hall, holding an unfinished circlet in both hands, wearing a dress she did not choose, in a room full of people watching her face crumble or hold together. She chose to hold together. She walked forward slowly, all the way to the ceremonial altar at the front of the room. She set the circlet down on the stone surface, gently, with both hands. She did not throw it. She did not slam it. She placed it as if it were something still worth treating with care. Then she turned around and walked back toward the door. No one stopped her. Caden said nothing else. She walked out of the hall, through the heavy front doors, and down the stone steps into the pale morning air. And then she kept walking until the estate was behind her, and the sound of that room was behind her, and there was nothing ahead of her but an ordinary street, with ordinary people, living their ordinary lives. Tamsin's apartment was small and warm, and smelled like coffee and old books. Mari sat on the couch for a long time without speaking. Tamsin brought her tea and sat beside her, and did not ask her to talk before she was ready. That was the thing about Tamsin. She understood that some kinds of pain needed to be quiet before they could be spoken. On the second day, Mari finally said it out loud. "I don't know who I am outside of that pack." Tamsin looked at her steadily. That's not true. You know exactly who you are. You just forgot. I gave up everything for that life. My work, my apartment, my city. She stared at the wall. I made myself small enough to fit inside a role that wasn't even real. You made yourself small, Tamsin said. But you are not small. There's a difference. Mari was quiet for a while. Then she picked up her phone. It had been blinking with notifications for 2 days. She had ignored most of them. But there was one email from her former architecture firm that she had been avoiding because she was not ready to feel hope yet. She opened it now. Her old supervisor had written to say that a proposal she had submitted before she left the firm, more than 2 years ago, had finally been selected for a major international project, a cultural center commission. The client was a development initiative based in Varen territory. The salary attached to the project was more than she had made in the past 3 years combined. She stared at the email for a long time. Then she wrote back and said she was interested. Varen territory did not look the way she expected. She had grown up hearing about the Varen line the way pack children hear about anything unfamiliar, with a mixture of curiosity and quiet wariness. The Ashford pack treated them as something separate, older, less modern in their ways. But the offices where she met with the development council were clean and bright, with tall windows and people moving through the hallways speaking in low, professional voices. It looked like any other well-run organization. And the man who led the meeting was not what she expected either. King Elias Varen was composed without being stiff. He listened more than he spoke, which surprised her. In her experience, powerful men tended to fill rooms with their own voices. He asked precise questions about her proposal and seemed genuinely interested in the answers, rather than waiting for a chance to redirect toward his own opinions. He reviewed her work seriously. He pointed out 3 details that could be strengthened. He was right about all 3. By the end of the meeting, the project was hers. As his team was gathering their things to leave, Elias paused near the doorway. He looked at her wrists. She had not thought about them. The ceremonial ink from the pre-Luna blessing had not yet faded completely. Faint marks, like a watercolor left in the rain. You were someone's Luna, he said. It was not a question. Mari met his gaze without looking away. The position was vacated before it began. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Whoever let you walk out of that hall made the worst political decision of his reign." He said it without flattery, without softness, the way someone states a fact they are confident in. Mari said nothing, but something in her chest shifted, just slightly, like a door opening a crack. The project took several weeks. She worked on site in Varen territory, more days than not, embedded with the council's design team, reviewing materials, adjusting plans, making the kind of decisions that required both technical knowledge and intuition. The people here were different, not dramatically, not in ways that were easy to explain, but the difference was real. No one measured her by whose name she carried. No one treated her contribution as secondary. The council members debated with her the way they debated with each other, which is to say directly and without apology, and her answers were taken seriously. Elias began to ask for her opinion on things beyond architecture, territorial boundary questions, community layout, cultural preservation of older structures within the development plan. She answered honestly, and sometimes disagreed with his council's initial approach, and he let her. He even thanked her for it. She was not sure what to do with that. One evening, working late in the design studio, she realized she had gone 6 full days without feeling small. That was new. She was on site at the construction grounds when Caden came. She saw him before he saw her. He was standing at the edge of the site in a long coat that was too formal for the dust and noise around him, looking for her, the way people look when they are used to being found, rather than doing the finding themselves. When he spotted her, he walked over directly. She took off her hard hat. She waited. "I made a mistake," he said. He said more than that. He said that Seraphine had spoken against her in private, had planted doubts over weeks, had worked carefully and deliberately to shift his perception. He said the elders were concerned. He said the pack was struggling without a Luna. He said he needed her to come back. Mari listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said, "Seraphine did not cause this. You believed what you believed because some part of you was already willing to believe it. She only made it easier." He started to speak. She held up one hand, not unkindly. I spent 3 years making myself convenient for you, Caden. I stopped arguing about things that mattered. I stopped pushing back. I thought that was what love looked like. I thought I was being devoted." She paused. "I was disappearing. And you let me disappear because a quieter version of me was easier to manage." "That is not what I wanted," he said. "I know," she said. "I do not think you wanted it. I think you never noticed, and that is almost worse." She put her hard hat back on. "I hope you find what your pack needs. I genuinely do, but it will not be me." She turned and walked back toward the site, and she did not look behind her. The cultural center was completed in the early weeks of autumn. The dedication ceremony was held on a Thursday afternoon. Both human guests and supernatural dignitaries attended, the two worlds moving in the same space, with the practiced ease of people who have been keeping the same secret for generations. The building was everything she had designed it to be, airy and warm, with natural light pouring in through layered glass panels, stone details that honored the older architecture of the territory, and open community spaces that could hold 100 people, or a single one with equal dignity. Mari sat in the front row in a burgundy dress she had bought herself, in a shop on an ordinary street, with her own money, without asking anyone's opinion. Elias spoke during the ceremony. He talked about the territory's history and its future. He thanked his council. He mentioned several members of the design team by name. When he came to Mari, he did not rush past it. He said, "Some people enter a place and take from it what they need. She came here and made it more itself." It was a simple sentence. It was the most accurate thing anyone had said about her in years. She realized, sitting there in the front row, that she was wearing deep burgundy without thinking about it. Not ivory, not gold, not the colors of a ceremony she had been handed by someone else. Something she had simply reached for that morning, because it suited her. It was such a small thing, and it meant everything. That night, long after the guests had gone, and the site was quiet, Mari sat at her drafting table, in the temporary studio she had been given during the project. The table was covered in the pleasant debris of finished work, rolled blueprints, color samples, a coffee cup from earlier in the day. On the corner of the table was a folded note she had found there when she returned after the ceremony. She had recognized Elias's handwriting from the notes he sometimes left on design reviews, careful and precise, with no unnecessary words. The note had 2 lines and a question. She read it twice. Then she picked up her pen. She thought about what the last several months had been, the morning she walked out of that hall with her head up and her hands empty, the weeks of silence in Tamsin's apartment, the slow, strange process of remembering what she was good at. The first day she disagreed with a council member, and the world did not end. The evening she worked late and felt, for the first time in a long time, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had not planned any of it. She had not chosen a dramatic reinvention. She had only refused to disappear any further. She had kept walking. She had answered emails. She had done her work. And somehow, simply by continuing to be herself, she had ended up here, in a place where being herself was not a liability, but an asset, not a problem to be managed, but a quality to be trusted. She pressed her pen to the paper. She wrote back. She was not the same woman who had set that circlet on the altar and walked out into the pale morning. She was the same name, the same hands, the same face in the mirror. But she had reclaimed something that had been getting quieter and quieter for years, something that turned out to be quite loud when it had room to breathe. The note on her table was not a solution or an ending. It was a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, a beginning was enough.